Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, hello again, everyone. Hello, welcome back to the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler on. Pleasure, as always. Happy to be back this week and always look forward to diving in with you. Today, I want to speak on a topic that I know is so relevant for so many of you, and that is the idea of situationships and why they keep happening for you. And I want to address some things in today's episode that may be outside of the typical advice you receive on this topic. People say to set your standards and watch out for red flags and stop accepting less and these kinds of general advice pieces. And I think there's a deeper element here that I want to explore, especially if you find yourself in a pattern that I see with a lot of the women I work with, where you meet someone and on the front end, there's high excitement, high energy, high hope for what it could be. And time again, as the relationship develops over a period of a couple of months, the level of commitment that the person shows you tends to be less and less and less and dwindling over time. You tend to get less investment from them, less willingness to define the relationship, less willingness to state a commitment about the future or a direction where they see this going. And over time, the space and the gap between you tends to widen and widen and widen until the relationship becomes almost non-existent. And this is a common pattern that I know so many of you have lived, and it's something I see recurring in the lives of a lot of the women I work with, where the men maybe come on strong on the front end. There's high excitement, high interest, and the relationship never really reclaims the peak that it had in the beginning. It kind of starts high and then just kind of slowly dwindles into nothing. And I think that is often the mark of a situationship. When we talk about what a situationship is, it's a relational entanglement that doesn't have anything solid holding it together. And so when the excitement and the dopamine and the intensity of the initial connection kind of wears off, there's not much remaining. And you may even like each other. You may even feel things for each other. On some level, you don't even want to hurt each other. It's not, generally people aren't malicious going into these things. It's more just we're driven by emotions and excitement and dopamine and hormones. And once that initial high starts to die off, there's not anything stable holding the relationship together. And so what I want to talk about in today's episode is some of the mistakes we make in the beginning that tend to set a relationship up in this way. Some of the unconscious blocks that we might have going into it that prevent us from framing it as more than a situationship on the front end. And really for you, the individual who is seeking a stronger commitment and who is seeking love in your life, how do you lead a relationship into that? This is a philosophy I've shared many times on the podcast, but I want to state it up front in today's episode. There are so many connections that happen that could become more if when we were participating in them, we were consciously leading them in a certain direction. And I think there are a lot of people who connect, who feel that excitement, who feel that rush of dopamine, who feel the hormones and all of it, that, there's kind of a biological drive into connection. And if we were entering that experience a little more consciously, and we were leading certain conversations to ground that in something real, rather than kind of letting nature take its course, so to speak. On the back end of that, when the initial high starts to wear off, we might find ourselves living inside something that has more stability. And so that's what I want to talk about in today's episode. How do we consciously lead a relationship in the direction of what we want it to be? And how do we prevent these high intensity, high chemistry, high excitement interactions that we find ourselves in from dwindling into nothing in a matter of a few months? So let me first address the surface level explanation of this. And this is something we're told to have high standards and to know what we want and to look out for red flags and to not accept less than we deserve. And these are generally good tips, right? To know what our standards are, to know the kind of person we want to be with, to know the way we want to be treated, to look out for the red flags, so to speak, and the narcissistic qualities, and to not accept less than we deserve. And that's not bad advice. But I think that advice only protects us from certain things. Because what often happens in a situationship is you find someone who does meet your standards. They don't have a lot of obvious red flags. You're not accepting less than you deserve. You're accepting exactly what you believe you deserve. And there's nothing on the front end to signal that this relationship is toxic or this relationship is unhealthy or that you're lowering your standards in this relationship, right? Like there's nothing on the front end to signal that. And I think if there were obvious red flags, if this person was demonstrating obvious narcissistic qualities, if this person was lying to your face and you were catching them in it, or if they were obviously below your standards, it would be a lot easier for most of us to say, hey, this isn't what I'm looking for. And so the trap comes when a relationship shows up with everything you're looking for, when it meets your standards, when it doesn't have those obvious red flags. And yet somehow, even when it's checking all those boxes, so to speak, it doesn't evolve into greater commitment. And that's where I think this surface level advice doesn't really hold. Because, again, I'm going to say it is, the problem is not always there's some narcissistic, non-committal asshole who's manipulating his way into your life to steal what he wants from you, but give nothing in return. Especially women. I think women are deeply intuitive. Women are deeply intelligent, very wise. And, you can kind of smell that stuff a mile away. And sometimes you go against your better judgment and you look back and say, well, I did kind of smell it, but I went along with it anyway, right? Like sometimes that is the case. But with a lot of the women I speak to, that's really not what's happening. It's not, I smelled it a mile away. I knew exactly who he was and I went against my better judgment. It's like, no, all the things were there. And somehow it just didn't translate. And I think this is really the juicy part of it. And this is what I work with so many of my clients on in the Inspired Love program. And by the way, I just want to mention this up front. Not about the Inspired Love program, but about the 7-day challenge, which is something that I was doing a lot last year. I think I did 10 challenges last year before my daughter was born. And the challenge is something that we work together for 7 days. It's a community immersion experience. It's wonderful. Like it's so much fun. The participants get so much value out of it. The feedback has been overwhelmingly incredible. It's just a really great experience. And I tend to think of it like, if you want to jump in for 7 days and just really identify clearly the core wounds that are still operating in your love life. If you want to see exactly how those are showing up, what are the underlying narratives that you're living from, and what are the underlying protective strategies that consistently sabotage love coming into your life? And then we take that and we contrast that with what are some really simple healing practices that you can get started with right away to start to bring greater awareness to these areas of your life and start to mitigate these challenges and these wounds that may still be operating inside of you, and start leading you towards more consciousness and more awareness and more effective communication and more leadership in your love life. That's what we do in 7 days. And so it's a really fast way to get a lot of value, an incredible amount of clarity, to grab some really powerful relational skills that you can start implementing immediately. And then something I always offer at the end of the challenge is the opportunity to join my larger container, which is the Inspired Love Program. And when you join through the challenge, you have the best opportunity to enter that program that you won't find anywhere else. So it's only available through the challenge. And so if that sounds like something that would be exciting to you to jump in with us for 7 days in this live community immersion, to get an incredible amount of value and awareness in just 1 week. And then if you feel inclined to take the next step into the Inspired Love Program, you don't have to, obviously, but if you choose to, you will get the best opportunity to do that through the challenge that you won't find anywhere else. So if that sounds exciting to you, I'm going to leave the link to get started with the challenge in the show notes right below wherever you're listening to this podcast episode. You can also go to inspiredloveprogram.com/challenge. And we're starting next week. So I want to shout that out early on today before we get too far into the episode. And I'd love to have a bunch of you join us because, the challenge is going to be phenomenal. And I'm really excited. Again, this is going to be the first one since the birth of my daughter, which I think I'm showing up to it, a transformed person in myself. So I'm excited to re-enter that container. It's been, I think the last one we did was July or August last year. So it's been 6 months, or I'm not doing the math exactly, but it's been quite a few months since we did it. And I'm excited to jump back in and bring a new version of myself to it. And I know it's going to be more powerful than ever. So space is limited. Grab your spot now. And we already have a bunch of people signing up. I've been watching the signups come in all morning. So yeah, that's an exciting opportunity, and I'd love to have you join me. But that being said, the reason I even spoke about that is because I'm talking about identifying these underlying patterns that drive us. And that's really what I want to get into in today's episode, in terms of when we look at why situationships are consistently showing up in our lives, and what is the driving factor underneath that. And this is what I was saying is something I really work with the ladies inside my Inspired Love Program is not even so much about know your worth and know your standards, because most of the women who come to work with me know that already. Like I don't really work with beginners. I work with women who have been in this work for some time. Like if you're listening to this podcast, you have probably been in this work for some time. You probably have a really high level of awareness. And so what I find with deeply intuitive, deeply wise, deeply aware women is not that they don't know their standards, or they don't know the red flags, or they don't know these things. But what I find is that they struggle to consciously navigate their way from a connection, an exciting new connection, into a meaningful relationship. And that's what I really want to talk about in today's episode. What is the process of directing a high energy, high intensity, high chemistry, meaningful connection into something more than just a momentary connection? What translates that into a long-term partnership? And so the first thing I want to state on that topic is that situationships are sustained by an unspoken truth. And so you know what you want. First of all, I think most of the women I work with, going in to a connection that you want a long-term committed relationship. Sometimes that involves a family and children, sometimes not, sometimes that's not a part of it, but you know that you're not just looking to hang out with someone for 3 months, have some sex, have some laughs, have some good times, and then watch it dwindle off into nothing. I almost never, I don't know, in all the years I've been doing this work, I don't know that I've ever met someone, and not to say these people aren't out there, but they're not the people I work with. I've never met someone who's I'm just looking to have fun for 3 months. Most of the women I work with are looking for something more meaningful than that, are looking for something with more longevity than that. And so what I notice is that you go into the relationship or the connection knowing what you want. And you begin to feel the moment when the experience of that connection is no longer headed in that direction, right? So in the beginning, it might feel like all cylinders are a go. I don't even know if that's a term, but it might feel like, we're all headed in the right direction. This feels exactly the way I want it to feel. The reciprocation is there. The attentiveness is there. The connection is there. The fire is there. We're all headed in the right direction. And then there's a moment, and maybe it happens a couple weeks in or a couple of months in, but there's a moment when you start to feel that I don't think we're 100% headed in the right direction anymore. And this is the moment where I find you make the first big mistake, is that you don't name this in a way that requires an answer. And here's why. And this is real, and I know you're going to feel this when I say it. Because the moment you name that, the relationship has to become real or end. And this is it's the insidious trap that we fall into so often, where if I name it now, if I name it in that important, critical moment where it actually matters, this relationship has to become real or it has to end. And that's scary. And the insidious thought that keeps us stuck is we say, well, if I give it a little more time, if I give it a little more patience, if I just keep giving them the best of myself, if I just keep showing them everything I have to offer, if I keep letting them fall in love with me, eventually we'll find our way there. And that's a big trap. That's a big trap. And I think another part of this is I don't want to have to be the one to do it. I don't want to have to be the one to lead the relationship in that direction. I want it to come from them. And that's a trap too, because what's happening when you do that is you're saying, I want to let this other person be responsible for my dreams and the desire of my heart. And I don't think that's a job that you can give to someone else. And so that's a big part of this. And I think this is something that we have to name early on in today's episode, is that we can't make the other person responsible for the manifestation of our dreams and the desires of our heart. That's something we have to be willing to be responsible for. And yes, that requires a deep level of vulnerability. Because if we are the one to name the desires of our heart, if we are the one to invite that person into that, then we are also the one assuming the risk of rejection. We are also the one assuming the risk of not being chosen. And nobody wants to be that. But this is the big downside to that. And it's important that I name this because when you reach that moment where you start to feel, and ladies, as intuitive as you are, I know that you feel this. You start to feel, okay, we were on track. We were heading in the right direction. And now it seems like we're not quite headed in that direction anymore. There's a shift in energy, a shift in participation, a shift in excitement. There's a shift that has happened, and I can feel that we're not quite headed in that direction like we were a week ago or 2 weeks ago or a month ago. And when you don't name that, and when you don't ask for more, you send an unconscious message to the relationship and to the other person. And what that message is, and you don't ever have to say it, it gets internalized regardless. What that message is I'm okay with the direction we're heading in. So if things start to feel a little more casual, if the level of intention starts to diminish, if the level of investment starts to diminish, and you don't speak about that, you are through your silence telling the other person that this is okay. And your silence is actually setting the standard in the relationship. So I want to name this cleanly. And this isn't an accusation, but it's here to create awareness. The number one reason that you keep ending up in situationships is because you abandon your own knowing to avoid vulnerability. You feel the discomfort. You know what you want. You sense the misalignment. But instead of doing something about it, you wait, you hope, and you try to manage the relationship from the background. So rather than saying cleanly, hey, a couple of months ago, I sensed a level of participation in you, a level of investment in you that I don't sense anymore. Did something change? What happened? Let's talk about it. Because the relationship that I'm looking for feels more like it felt last month, not so much the way it feels this month. And if you're looking for a connection that is okay with this kind of investment, then maybe this isn't the right connection for you. Like that's a strong, courageous conversation to have. And most people are inclined to tolerate the ambiguity and hope for more, rather than facing that conversation head on. But as I already said, when you tolerate the ambiguity, that becomes the standard for the relationship. You are unconsciously teaching that person that this level of participation is acceptable for you. And I want to say this because we all have the fantasy of the partner who's going to be the parent that we never had. And I think a lot of this is driven by unresolved inner child wounds, which, by the way, is something we do a lot of work with in the challenge. And so if you relate to this, the challenge might be a great place for you to start. But I want to name this dynamic of how our unresolved inner child wounds tend to create relationships for us. Because when we feel that something is missing in a connection, I want this person to be invested in a way that they're not, or I want this person to give me a level of attention that they're not offering, or I want this person to meet certain needs that they're not naturally meeting. And we all have this fantasy of the person who's going to know exactly what we want, exactly how we want it, that they're going to be able to meet those needs without us even asking. They're going to be the ultimate committed person in our lives, and they're going to lead the commitment. And we're never going to have to say anything about it. They're just going to love us and tend to us and care for us. And we're never going to even have to bring it up. And what I want to say about that is that dream is not the dream of the perfect partner. It's the dream of the perfect parent. Because a partner is not a person who anticipates our needs for us and unconsciously or like instinctively knows how to meet them, right? Our perfect partner is not a psychic who can read our inner world and anticipate what we need before it's even spoken. Our perfect partner is the one who hears our needs, who cares about them, who prioritizes them, and who meets them after they're spoken. And that dream of the perfect person is actually like, that's the role of a parent, right? Like I'm a parent now. I have an 8-month-old daughter. And my job as a parent, as a father, is to anticipate her needs and meet them. Because she can't communicate them. She communicates through crying, but my job is to anticipate, okay, she needs a nap. I need to put her down. She needs to eat. I need to get a bottle ready for her, right? Like this is my job as a parent, is to anticipate her needs and meet them. But that's not my job for my wife. That's not my wife's job for me. Now, over the course of our relationship, over the last 10 years that my wife and I have been together, we've communicated a lot about our needs, and there's a level at which, to some degree, we know what the other person wants and expects from us, and we can do that without being asked. But that's only because we've spent the last 10 years learning each other. And let me tell you, even 10 years in, I sometimes have to remind my wife, like, hey, love, I need this. We had a conversation recently, like I shared with my wife, and it was very vulnerable for me and it was very uncomfortable to bring up, but I'm doing a lot. Like I feel like I'm single-handedly holding the household together right now because 100% of your intention is on the baby. And I feel like you're taking care of the baby and I'm taking care of you and the baby and everything else in the household. And sometimes I just need a little acknowledgement that you see me and that my efforts matter. And that was something I had to bring up to my wife. It's not something that she intuitively knew, especially when she's completely occupied with taking care of the baby. So I had to be vulnerable enough to express that emotional need in the relationship. I can't expect her to be the parent who's going to anticipate my needs without me asking. And if I don't express those needs, then I get resentful. Then I feel like I'm doing everything and I'm never appreciated for it. And that affects the relationship. Right? So we have to be responsible for communicating our own needs and ensuring that they get met in a relationship. That's my responsibility. That's my wife's responsibility for herself. That's your responsibility for any relationship that you're in. And so if you are in a relational dynamic and maybe you've been together for 3 months or 6 months and you feel that there are needs that you have for security, for stability, for a direction of the future, for feeling like you have a definition for what this is and where it's going and what this means. If these are needs that you have and you are feeling the tension in your body that these needs are not being met in the relationship, it's your responsibility to bring that to the relationship. And yes, that's vulnerable. I was talking to a client of mine recently about this, and she was sharing how she was in a similar situation with a man. They'd been dating for a few months, and She was waiting for him to bring up a conversation of commitment or waiting for him to tell her what he wanted in this relationship and where he wanted it to go. And I asked her, I said, well, why didn't you bring it up? And she said, because I didn't want to be the one who wanted it more than he did. And what I said to her was, well, what you are asking him for there is you're asking him to risk the vulnerability that you're not willing to risk yourself. So you want him to come to you and say, I want this relationship. I want to be with you. I want a future with you. And for him to absorb 100% of the responsibility for the potential of rejection, the potential of not being chosen or not being met. And of course he could do that. I'm not saying that men never ever do that. Sometimes they do. But here's the thing. The responsibility isn't necessarily on the man or the woman. It's on the person who feels the need for it most potently. And so let's collapse this conversation from, well, this is the man's job or this is the woman's job, to it's the individual's job to honor the truth that is alive inside their body. She was feeling it, but she didn't want to speak it. She wanted him to absorb all the risk, to absorb all the vulnerability for the thing that she was feeling. And here's the reality of a situation like that. He may not be feeling it to the degree that she was. But if she were to honor the truth of what she was feeling, she might invite him into something that he never would have initiated on his own. And this is a difference between men and women that I want to name. And this is a delicate conversation. And I want to acknowledge that because women often feel that they are carrying the emotional burden in a relationship. And on one hand, that can be exhausting. That can be depleting. That can make her feel like she's never met in the relationship. That can make her feel like she's always doing the work for both people. And that's not fair. So there's a delicate conversation here because a lot of women have gotten used to carrying the emotional burden in a relationship. And now she's protecting herself from that. After maybe many times where she carried all of that, she's saying, I'm not doing that anymore. And that's a valid boundary because it's not her job to carry 100% of the emotional weight in a relationship. But I'm going to play devil's advocate for that with a moment because women are often more in touch with their emotions than men are. Women often have language for their emotions that men don't have. The average woman has probably spent more time in therapy than the average man. The average woman has probably spent more time considering her relational needs than a man has. The average woman has spent more time dreaming about love and dreaming about partnership, while the average man has spent more time conditioning himself to be comfortable with independence. And there are a lot of reasons for this. Some of it is instinctual and biological. Some of it is conditional and what we've been trained in and how our nervous systems have been trained growing up in the world that we grow up in. And we all find ourselves in some mix of biology and conditioning that leads us to have these relational patterns, and men largely observe certain patterns and women largely observe other patterns. And of course, there are exceptions on both sides. So I'm not speaking for every woman or every man. I'm speaking for large trends. But here's the reality. When a woman and a man are in a relationship, especially in the early stages, the reality is that a man is often very comfortable coasting, and a woman is often very uncomfortable coasting. And this is where it becomes essential for her to speak her needs, not because it's the woman's job, so to speak, but it's because she's the one who feels the need for it. She's the one who feels the need for the direction. She's the one who feels the need for the safety. She's the one who feels the need to define what this is, to have a vision for where this is going or what the future would hold. And he is often just living in it day to day. He's not overthinking, where is this going? What does this mean? What is our title? What is our frame? What level of commitment? He's often not overthinking those things. He's just looking forward to seeing her this weekend. He's just enjoying the time they spend together. Now, if he were feeling a deep need for clarity, a deep need for structure in the relationship, a deep need for relational safety, a deep need to establish a direction or a vision for the future, if he were feeling that, then it would be his responsibility to honor that. So it's not about what is a woman's work or what is a man's work. It's about, is the individual honoring their truth? Is the individual honoring their needs? But if he's comfortable coasting and she's the one feeling the tension, she needs to take responsibility for her own truth in the relationship rather than hoping he's going to be the perfect parent that she never had. Rather than allowing this inner child wound to hope for the savior to come and do the relational work for her. And I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to tie it back here. Not only is she often the one who feels the need more potently than he does, she's often the one who is more clear about exactly what she wants from the relationship. She's often the one who has the language to define what she's feeling. She's often the one who is sitting around ruminating and reflecting on her needs. Men are often not doing that in the same way that women are. And so this is why it becomes her responsibility. And the mistake she makes is, rather than speaking her truth about what's real for her, she suppresses it. And she overanalyzes the relationship rather than just simply saying, this is what I need in this connection right now. She gets stuck in the rumination about it. She starts analyzing every text message, reading into everything he says. Does it mean this? Does it mean that? She starts dropping hints and then getting frustrated that he doesn't pick up on the hints. And what she really needs to say is, hey, I've really been enjoying our connection over these last few months. I really like you. I've become emotionally invested in this relationship. And before I let myself go entirely, before I let myself really fall in love here, I want to have a conversation about what this is and what this means and where we see it going and if we actually want the same things. And when she does that, she interrupts the coasting and she sets a new standard for the connection. And I'm going to say this because this is important. If she does this 2 months in, it's a lot more powerful than if she does it 2 years in. And I've seen a lot of women who find themselves 2 years, 5 years into a relationship that's just been coasting but doesn't have any real direction. And I get the question a lot of times, well, I've been with my boyfriend 3.5 years now. Is it too late? And I say, well, it's not too late. You can always bring it up now, and you shouldn't wait longer. But at 2 months in or 3 months in, you're still establishing the direction of the relationship. At 2 years in or 3 years in, the direction has already been established. And so when you wait that long, there's a lot of momentum that you have to undo. And a lot of times at that point, if you're with a man who's been comfortable coasting for 2 or 3 years, he's going to say, why do we have to change things now? Why are you only bringing this up now? We've been fine for all this time. Where when you bring it up 2 months or 3 months in, he's still in the position of earning the relationship. And then it becomes a condition of how he needs to participate in order to earn the connection. It carries a lot more weight and it's a lot more powerful at that stage. But if she allows her fear of losing him, her fear of rejection, her fear of being too much, if she allows that to make the decision for her, then she stays in ambiguity to preserve a future possibility. But the reality is that that only undermines how far this relationship can truly go. And this is something I want to say here because there's a lot of conversation about wanting men who lead. I see this all the time. I want a man who leads. I want a man to lead the relationship. I want a man who's a leader. And I understand the sentiment, and part of it is valid, and part of it is more of this inner child wound I've been talking about. When you say, I want a man who leads me, part of that is I want a man who will be the parent of the relationship. I want a man who will assume the responsibility in the relationship so I don't have to. And what I want to say to that is, you're undermining your own power. You have the power to lead a relationship, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And let me clarify this, because I don't mean that you have to plan every date. I don't mean that you have to initiate every connection. Like if a man is doing nothing, he's probably not worth your time. And that's important for me to say here. I'm not saying that you should chase him. I'm not saying that you should control him. I'm not saying that you should carry 100% of the weight in the relationship. But what I'm saying is you lead by bringing your truth into the connection. A lot of women judge men based on how much they lead the connection. But I want to say often a really conscious man is the one who's humble enough to follow the pace that she sets in the connection. And this is something they don't talk about on social media. A lot of women are waiting for a man to lead in the very place that she is strongest. Again, I said this earlier, but I want to come back to it. She has more clarity about what she needs from the relationship. She has more clarity about her emotional world. She has more language to speak about her emotions. She has more language to speak about her needs. She's been more reflective on this. She might have spent time in therapy about this, where he hasn't necessarily done all of that. And then she wants him to lead the domain that she's been actively reflecting on and practicing for maybe decades. How could he ever lead that for her? And then we fall into this trap where, well, if he hasn't done the work on himself to know his emotional awareness and to have the language for these things and to be able to lead the relationship, then he's not worth shit and he's not the kind of man I want to be with. And I'm like, well, that's a really comforting statement that absolves you of all the personal responsibility in a relationship. But what about this? What if he didn't necessarily have the language for it, and he didn't necessarily have the deep awareness, and he wasn't necessarily deeply connected to the fact that I want to be in a committed lifetime partnership? What if he was in a slightly different place with all of that? More willing to accept something casual, more willing to go with the flow, less awareness about what his deepest emotional needs are, less language to speak about them, right? Like he doesn't necessarily have all of that. But when she brings it up, when she says, I need to feel safe in a connection that I know is going somewhere. And he says, yeah, I get that. I want you to feel safe. When she says, I want to know that you're invested in this and that you're not just going to be done with it in a week. And he says, yeah, I want you to know that too. And the truth is, I'm not going anywhere. I want to be with you. When she says, I want to get married. I want to have a family. And he says, well, I guess I haven't given a lot of thought to where I am with that, but I could be open to that. Yeah, in the big picture, I would like that. And you're the kind of woman that I could see myself having that with. So yeah, I think if we stay together, I could definitely see it going in that direction. He's not leading the relationship in that sense, but he's meeting her where she needs to be met. And this is something I think a lot of women underestimate. They underestimate how willing men are to meet them there when they speak about it powerfully and honestly. And I want to distinguish this, like, I'm not talking about emotional sharing. I'm talking about directional vulnerability. You are being vulnerable about the deepest needs and desires of your heart, but not from a weak place. Not like, oh my God, I'm so desperate and I need you so badly and I hope you pick me. From a powerful place, from a clear place. This is what I want. This is what I need from the man in my life. Are you the man who can meet me there? A lot of women think that bringing up this conversation creates pressure. This is actually the absence of pressure. And this is something a lot of women misunderstand. When you say, this is what I need from the man in my life, can you meet me there? You're not creating pressure. You're actually letting him off the hook. You're saying, if you can't meet me where I need to be met, you are free to go. That is the ultimate release of pressure. That means you're not holding him under expectations that he feels he can't meet. That means he doesn't have to carry the weight every day of your unvoiced expectations that are then leading to resentment that he then feels is in the water. And he's tiptoeing around this unspoken resentment. This is the ultimate freedom for his nervous system. You're giving him very clear direction. Either step into it or step out of it. And ladies, I want you to know that 90% of men will give you a clear, honest answer when you approach it this way. This actually, and this might be why women struggle with this, because this is more in the direction of a masculine frame than a feminine frame. Because the feminine frame is very go with the flow. The feminine is the absence of structure. The feminine is kind of being flowing in the moment, going with what the moment is calling her into. The masculine is the structure. And so what I'm naming here is her creating more of a masculine frame. It's her creating a structure. This is what I need. Step into it or step out of it. But this is what men need from women because this is what men can understand. The feminine frame of wishing, hoping, hinting, surrendering to the flow of it, putting her trust in him to make the decisions, that is the feminine approach, and that's why so many women naturally fall into it, but it's not something he understands. When she says, "This is what I want. Can you meet me there?" She is interrupting any amount of casual coasting that is taking place in the relationship, and she's calling it into something real. And I want to go back to what I said earlier about it's more powerful to do it at 2 months rather than 2 years. Because there's something, a man is in a really interesting position 2 months in. By 2 years in, he's comfortable. He feels like he has control of the dynamic. He's in a very different position. At 2 months in, he still feels like he's earning your place in his life. He still has this need to make you happy, to feel like he wants to impress you. And that is the time to call him into something greater before he's become too comfortable in the relationship. And this might sound like manipulation, I get that, but it's not really manipulation, it's relational intelligence. It's understanding human nature and understanding when somebody has had access to you for years, they grow comfortable in that dynamic. When somebody is still in the phase of wanting to impress you, wanting to earn your approval, wanting to please you and make you happy, that's the time to call forth a commitment from them. And I know, like, I'm hearing the other side of this conversation, and I'm sure you're probably hearing it too, is like, so are you saying 2 years in, men stop caring about pleasing their woman? And no, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying 2 years in, men and women both become accustomed to the standards that have been set over the course of that 2 years. And if the standard that has been set over the course of those 2 years is a dismissal of needs, is an avoidance of difficult conversations, is a willingness to let the relationship coast in comfort and casualness, then that is what he comes to expect from the relationship and what he's become accustomed to. And at that 2-3 month window early on, when he's in that nervous system state of, I want to make her happy, I want to please her, I want her to like me, I want her to want to be with me, he's very, very likely to give her what she's asking for. He's very, very likely to surrender to the frame that she sets for the relationship. And let me say this, if 2 or 3 months in, he's not in that place, it's probably a good time to let it go before you get 2 to 3 years in and he's still not in that place. And I want to come back to the fear. Something I said very early on in this episode is when you make that statement, this is what I need, can you meet me there? You are calling the relationship to either evolve or to end. And that's a scary place to stand. And I say this after working with hundreds of women in the deep, intimate dynamics of their love lives. The unwillingness to stand in that place is the number one reason that women are not calling forth more commitment from men. It's the number one reason. Most men are not commitment avoidant necessarily. They are just comfortable with casualness. And those are not the same thing. They seem like the same thing, but they're not. It's not that men actively avoid commitment. It's that they're comfortable in casualness. And so if casualness is allowed, they default to it. And if commitment is required, they step into it. Him not leading you into commitment doesn't mean he doesn't care. It doesn't mean that he doesn't want to be with you. It doesn't mean that he wouldn't commit. It simply means he's defaulting to what feels safe and comfortable to his nervous system. And what I want to say for all the ladies out there is when you don't bring it up, you're doing the same thing. You're defaulting to what feels safe and comfortable for your nervous system. And then you might say, well, why is it my responsibility to step into discomfort and not his? And that's a fair question. It's a very fair question. Because one of you has to do it first. Commitment is uncomfortable for both of you, maybe for slightly different reasons, but it's uncomfortable for both of you. So why do you have to step into it first? Well, here's what I'm going to say. When you stop making it about who has to do it first, and you start making it about being true to yourself and honoring your own needs, that argument loses its relevance. See, I'm not saying the woman has to do it first because it's the woman's job. I'm saying the person who feels the need the strongest needs to honor that need, not for him, but to be true to herself. So if that's you, be it a man or a woman, honor your truth. And then the argument of who does it first starts to fall away. See, you being willing to lead the relationship into commitment is not chasing. Chasing is bending over backwards, trying to perform and please him in hoping that you will be chosen. That's often the opposite of leadership. That's more of a manipulative tactic we fall into when we're afraid to take the lead. Clarity is you setting the standard and giving him the space to choose to rise into it. This is not pressure, it's the absence of pressure. Pressure is manipulating him behind the scenes, forcing him to live under the weight of your unmet expectations, and then secretly building resentment when he doesn't do it. Clarity is giving him the absolute freedom to walk if he's not the man who can meet you in the way that you want to be met. And this requires a lot of courage. And I want to speak to this before I close out today, because when you do this, you are vulnerably expressing your needs in a relationship. You are vulnerably facing the reality of rejection or the reality of not being chosen. When you give him the freedom to walk away, you are accepting the possibility that he might. And that brings up a lot of internal questions of, why wasn't I worthy enough for him to stay? And sometimes when you do this, that is something you will have to confront. But what I want to say is this: that is in the water all the time already. That's already there. That's already the question that you're asking yourself every day regardless. And so it really becomes, do I face this head on? Do I acknowledge this in myself head on and have the courage to face it head on? Or do I let it be the unconscious motivator that's driving all of my fears and thoughts and actions and feelings inside the relationship? And it's there anyway. I'm just not dealing with it directly. So I want to say, your willingness to lead the relationship in the direction you want it to go, that is not self-abandonment. That is not you selling out on the kind of partner that you are supposed to have or the kind of partner you're looking for. That is not you accommodating someone who's not willing to rise for you. It's not what a lot of the talk about it makes it sound like. It's simply the willingness to be true to yourself, to honor your truth. And I think women need to give themselves more credit for the leadership ability that they have. Ladies, you are, in general terms, going to be more emotionally intelligent than the men you meet. You are going to be more spiritually connected than the men you meet. You are going to have more relational awareness than the men you meet. And you don't need to wait for a man who can meet you in the exact same place you are on all these levels. You might be waiting a long time for that. But a man who has the emotional capacity to hear your needs, to understand their importance, to honor them, and to want to meet you there, that's a high quality man. And this is what I've seen time and time again, is like, the best men are not the men who have it all figured out before you meet them. The best men are the ones who are humble enough to learn and grow in relationship with a powerful woman. Long term, these end up being the best, most supportive partners. And I want to say one thing in closing, because I know that with the way the talk is in the culture right now, like, some of what I'm saying might be interpreted like, are you saying I should carry some beta man in and lead him and direct him in life? And no, that's not what I'm saying. Nothing I'm saying has anything to do with him being a beta, which, I mean, I think this manosphere thing is on its way to collapse right now. And maybe we can let go of the terms alpha and beta altogether. But a lot of these men that I'm talking about are highly intelligent, strong, powerful, masculine men who want to provide, who want to care for their woman, who want to meet her needs. None of that makes him a beta or a soft, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is, but like, none of that makes him less of a man. In fact, the most masculine men operate in a very simple frame of I'm a provider. Tell me what you want and I will provide it. Tell me how I can make you happy and I will bend heaven and earth to give that to you. And sometimes he's just sitting and waiting for you to be honest enough to tell him how he can love you. And the moment you do, he'll give you everything you're asking for. And I don't think that's a weak man. I think that's a strong man. The weak man is the one who avoids your truth. The strong man is the one who hears it, prioritizes it, and steps into the role of provider to make sure you get what you need. So I want to leave you with that today. If you're struggling in and out of situationships, the question I want you to ask yourself is, how honest and vulnerable have I been about what I need from a relationship? And how early in the relationship have I been willing to talk about that? Am I willing to set the standard for what I need in relationship? Or am I passively waiting for someone else to do it for me? So I'm going to close with that. Lots of love and blessings to all of you. Thank you for being with me. I do want to shout out one more time. We have the challenge starting next week. I'm really excited to kick this off. Really excited to work with all of you inside the challenge. The cost is only $35 right now with early enrollment. So go ahead, click the link right below wherever you're listening to this podcast. Grab your spot in the challenge. Space is limited, so don't wait. Do it now. And I'll look forward to working with you live next week. Lots of love and blessings. Until then, I'll see you there. Take care, everybody. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.